Hi guys, welcome to Basement Supercar Build, the channel where we see if an average guy like me can design and build his own mid-engine car. This video will be a highlights video of the work that was finished this week. If you want to see the actual work take place, watch the full-length video for this week. And with that out of the way, let's get started on this week's video.
Okay, let's take a look at this up close. I've got the engine, I'm pretty sure exactly where it needs to be. I have been playing with some shims to get it to where the bottom of the oil pan is just slightly above flush with the bottom of the car. And I've got it just above flush because the engine will mount on rubber mounts, and I think it will sink or sag just slightly, and I don't want it touching the floor pan of the car when the engine is revving and moving around. It will rotate slightly. I've made these mounts and transferred the holes into the frame, and I've just got bolts dropped in to locate them. They're in the correct position front to back, and I've got a engine mount plate here bolted with one bolt on the engine. The plates that I have ordered, the engine mounts I have ordered, will replace these. I'm waiting for those to come in today so I can finish, but once they get here, I'll bolt those to the engine, and then I've just got to cut some tubing and weld between the two, which is only maybe 6 inches apart or so. But here you can see where my wood former is sitting on these shims to get the exact right height. And everything measures correctly. The engine seems to be dead in the center of the frame, and I know it's running along the center line because of my fixture I've got made here that wedges just between the frames. Let's go here to the front side of the engine. I didn't weld caps on these because I knew at least on one side I was going to have some clearance issues I'd have to trim away. This side looks good. I'll go ahead and weld a cap on that sometime in the near future. And on this side, the air conditioner bracket just all but touches, and I knew it was going to, and I knew I was going to have to trim away some here, but I don't know how much until I buy the actual air conditioner compressor and mount it to this bracket. But should be able to trim off some here and get that to fit without any problems, and then I'll cap that off. I don't want any openings in the frame, but everything looks good. My tubing here, these 4 tubes I ran through the car a few days ago, all of these will connect to these 4 tubes with rubber hoses. I've just got to try to find some hoses that are somewhere near the correct shape and at least long enough I can trim them back if I need to connect all this plumbing up. I'll have to put a bead roll on the ends of all these tubes, so when you put a hose clamp it won't press off under pressure. I'll probably make a homemade bead roller. I've been looking at some videos on how to do that, but it's going to be a few days before I actually do that, and not quite sure how I'm going to find these rubber tubes other than try to draw some pictures of the shapes and write down some dimensions and just go to the store and start looking at all the rubber hoses hanging on the wall and see if something matches. But something I'll do in the near future also. But the next step will be, you can see this other mount over here on this side, bolted or bolts dropped in, just locating it. But the next step will be once UPS or FedEx, whichever arrives today and brings the engine mounts, I will bolt those to the engine and start finishing the engine mount, and then we can actually mount the engine in permanently in the car, at least temporarily permanent. And we'll call that complete and move on to something else, but that'll be a huge step forwards. Well, the parts were delivered, and this is what they look like. This plate bolts to the engine, and then these plates bolt or weld to whatever you're fabricating for an engine mount. And I've got one of these sitting in position, somewhat bolted to the engine. I've got to open up the holes. The holes are a little tight and not in the correct alignment, but you can see I could actually weld those ears or tangs that were provided straight to that plate and make a mount, but I don't believe that's going to be quite strong enough. So I'm going to put some tubing so far up and then weld those ears that they provided onto the tubes. Not 100% sure what that's going to look like just yet, but I've got something in mind and we will get started fabricating that. Well, the engine is in the car and it is bolted to the engine mounts. It's sitting on the engine mounts. There's no more wooden shims underneath. You can see the wood shims here that used to be sitting under the front of the engine. And my fixture here is just hovering above the frame. It's not sitting on the shims. I pulled the shims out. But this is what I did for the mount. And I'm pretty happy with that. My wales aren't the greatest, but they're okay. They need a little bit of cleaning, and once that part's powder coated, it should look great. I don't have the bolts to bolt all the way through and put the bottom piece of metal underneath the tube that will capture all of that. I've got to order some hardware, but I've got some bolts dropped in place just to keep it from shifting around. And the front of the engine is tilted down just a tiny bit, but when I mate the transaxle to it, all of the weight of that transaxle should push the engine back down level. And the transaxle has a mount also that'll attach somewhere to the frame, and we will level up the engine perfectly once we get all of that attached. But very happy with what I'm seeing. You can see here that the chain hoist is not attached to the engine. It is physically sitting in the car. I wish I had scales to weigh the car. I'm not quite sure what it weighs right now, but with everything on it like it sits, I'm guessing it's 800 or 900 pounds. I have to see about weighing it sometime in the future. I'm not sure how to do that. I may have to borrow some racing scales or something. But this was pretty fun. Exciting times. Hope you guys are enjoying the build. Well, after a 6 or 7 week wait, I finally have aluminum sheets. Came in today. This one's got a little damage on the corner, but there's extra. I won't need every little bit of it, so there's damage on the other end too. But anyway, there's plenty here to do what I need to do. I've got 2 different thicknesses. I have 090 for the floorboards in the main cabin area under the driver and passenger's feet, and then I've got a sheet of 063 here to skin the rest of the car underneath. So the entire bottom will be skinned in aluminum, and there will be a couple of removable access panels. But the next thing I need to do is completely disassemble the car back down to the frame so I can flip it upside down and start measuring and cutting these panels and welding them on. So don't look forward to that, but it's got to be done, and I guess let's go ahead and get started on that. Well, that was a rough 2 hours work. Came apart pretty fast, but that's about all I'm going to get done tonight. And I am tired and my back is breaking in half. But we got it apart, and engine up on the engine stand. Frame is all taken apart except for the steel mounts. I'm hoping that I can still lift it and flip it over. It's going to be a little heavier than I'm used to. If I can't lift it, then I'll have to remove the steel suspension mounting plates, take it back down to the bare aluminum. But I guess the first thing we'll do is these corners where the tires are almost rubbing. I'm going to cut these off one at a time and weld in the new shorter pieces, or these angle pieces, to give me more tire clearance. I want to do them one at a time to keep the frame chassis from trying to warp, and I don't want to take it completely apart again. So that will be the next thing we do, and we will start on that tomorrow night. Well, I have all 4 of my angle pieces cut and fit, and I have the chassis marked. You can see here on the left hand side I've got the marks where I need to cut the pieces out one by one and then weld in the new parts. I have one of them welded in. You can see what it looks like. If you look straight down, you can kind of see how much more clearance that gives the tire. I added 1.25 inches to what I had, so be at least 1.5 inches minimum on the bottom and closer to probably 2 inches on the top. But that's what I'm doing, and I'm cutting and inserting these one at a time, hoping to keep the frame from twisting or warping at all. This piece fit pretty well. The welds look so-so, as good as the rest of my welds. And I've got to pick up some more of these Sawzall blades tomorrow. I ruined the one that I have left for metal, cutting that piece out, so I need to get 3 or 4 more tomorrow. And then I will continue cutting and welding these other 3 pieces in on the frame. Once this frame is done, one thing, I'll be happy, because I've been dreading doing this for quite a while now, but that one wasn't horrible. So we get these 4 pieces done, then we'll move on to cutting and welding on the bottom plates for the car. So let's get started working on that, I guess.